And the way that some of those leases are structured as well, like the commercial leases, so the lease that the tenant signs, is that they will cover all of the outgoings. So they're called triple net leases. So they pay the rent and they pay all of the outgoings. So they pay the water rates, the council rates, the repairs and maintenance and things like the air conditioning bills and things like that. So that's why sometimes commercial is a better avenue. If you've got, the money and you find the right one, you put in, you might have to pay, like anything, just pay your, interest on the loan back.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Black Wealth Connect. Today, I got a brother that I've known for a very long time. We played soccer together. Currently, he's a manager in investment and development property sales. I want to make sure that I get that right. Being in the same industry for a very long time and has done various roles within that industry or within that company, should I say. We played soccer against each other, and I think we've also played for the same team, I'm pretty sure, but I'll confirm with him.
1 year, I think.
1 year? All right. Well, look, but I'll just put it out there before we talk about it. Jesse and my guest, sorry, I shouldn't say his name. I'm better than them 100%. It's stats speak for themselves, and, the numbers are there. So without any further ado, I want to introduce my brother, as I've said. Lord, how are you, man?
Busy, flat out, to be honest. I had soccer actually this afternoon as well. After that.
Oh wow! You still got it, or you reckon?
I'm getting old.
Yeah,
I'm getting old.
How the knee? How
he's not holding up as well as he used to.
Really? So as we were talking about on the phone, you've obviously got back into competitive soccer. Like, what's the difference in terms of where it is right now compared to when we used to play, like back in the days together?
Look, I took off last year. I was semi-retired. And then one of the coaches called me at the back end of last year to come back and play. So representing football. Okay. And that's training three times a week. So pretty full on. I think the difference, or the main differences that I see, is that the players that we used to play with, like myself and some of the older boys, like it was a lot more technical. There's a lot more skill involved, a lot more technical. The players were a bit smarter in terms of how they read the game and how they played. These days, I think it's more about the physicality and the athleticism of the players.
So they're literally just super fit, and
they run all day. They're physical. They try to be quick, but there's not as much skill. And you know
what? Like, it's funny that you even say that too, because even when you just watch normal like soccer on TV, like the A-League and even Premier League to some extent, they're not really skillful, what I mean? They just, especially with the EPL, they're it's based on speed, dominance. Like, they literally get the ball from one side of the field to the other side of the field in like less than a couple of seconds. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just, obviously it's just, kick it, not hope for the best, but just run, have the speed, like, you know what I mean? And
look, I think there are still some skillful players that play in A-League, but just the way they're coached, they aren't coached to play with flair or, like they just, get it, pass it, cross the ball in, let's get up and down sort of thing. So that's the main difference. And I think like the coaches have a bit to play in as well. And like when you watch the EPL, there are teams, obviously there's like the top 4 or 5 teams and then there's the other teams, but that's the only way that they compete against, players, by being physically stronger, faster, better. That's true. That's how I see it.
No, that's very true. No, that's a good observation, because when you do watch it, you do see that. So you being you're a father now, just getting into that, because I know that like when I'd known you back in the days, it's not something, we're all young, like everyone was just focused on their dreams of becoming the biggest soccer players in the world at that time. And just focusing on school or whatever it is that you were doing at that time. So how's fatherhood been for you? Like, is it challenging? Is it something that you expected? How is it?
Oh, it's definitely not something that I expected. It's a big change to life, definitely. You've got a lot more responsibility. Like, you're not only just thinking about yourself anymore. You've got kids to think about. You've got the wife, the partner to think about, and how you provide for them. So it's a lot of responsibility, but something that I enjoy and I've loved, you know, like I love my kids. So I'm always going to try and, you know, like provide for them and do right by them. Try and build a future for them as well.
Are you going to get them into sport too? Obviously, you have two boys.
Of course.
So you
got to get them into
boys.
I need to enter the soccer factory early. So
they've started a bit, or how's that process?
Like I go to the park with them, kick the ball around. I'm trying to get my oldest into like a soccer program now, but there's a wait list, you know, because there's a lot of kids playing.
Really?
A lot of kids doing it. So I've been on the wait list for about a month.
Are you serious?
Yeah, to just get him into like weekend soccer.
Damn.
So I think it's definitely something that I want to get my kids into. I don't want to force them, but I want to get them playing, definitely.
Into sport, because I feel like even just getting kids into sport in general, it allows them to obviously create that competitive nature within them. But at the same time, it can also keep them out of trouble. And, you don't want to, it gives them something to basically keep them busy over the weekends.
Keep them fit, keep them fit,
healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, like I've got my kids in swimming at the moment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they're doing swimming on Saturdays. They were doing this Ready, Steady, Go kids thing. So it's like athletics, a few different sports. So golf, AFL sort of thing. But yeah, soccer's next. Like I didn't want to rush him into soccer, like just force him into it. I was like, let them try a few different things and then push him into soccer.
No, nice. Okay. Talk to me, man. How was your childhood like? Obviously, because I don't know that side of you, man. Like, I mean, you growing up and like where you were at and things like, so were you born in Australia or were you born in, because you're originally from Ghana? So, where were you born and what was your childhood like, man?
Yeah, I was born at Blacktown Hospital, actually.
Oh, really? Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was born in Australia, born at Blacktown Hospital, grew up around that area as well. Lived in Quakers Hill, went to primary school around there as well. And I've always been around that sort of Western Sydney, northwest area of Sydney. That's where I've grown up. So it's sort of local for me.
Damn, I didn't know you were that local. So obviously, and then you obviously living around Glenwood and things like that. I remember growing up, we lived very close to each other because you were in Bella Vista.
Yeah, I moved around between Glenwood, Bella Vista, Quakers Hill, but those three suburbs is where my family sort of lived. My parents, they like to build houses. We moved from Quakers Hill. We built a house at Quakers Hill. Then we moved to Glenwood, built a house there. Moved to Bella Vista, built a house there. Back to Glenwood. And now they've just built a house in Box Hill, actually. So my parents just love buying houses and building. Buying land and building.
Yeah, that's one thing I also want. Because, before I jump into what I wanted to ask you, but it's crazy because I don't know if you know this, but when I lived in Glenwood at the time, because now for people that don't know, I live in Melbourne, but I've grown up in Sydney all my life. And I don't know if you remember, it's called Currawong Street.
Currawong,
yeah. It's like close to the Woolworths. Yeah, I actually lived on that street at the end near the school. And I remember your parents actually moved, like if you go straight down, it's at the Coda.
That's right.
At the cul-de-sac.
The cul-de-sac.
So that was crazy. You guys lived there. And I don't know if you remember that, but you literally lived like 2 seconds away from me. So how long were you guys down there for? Like in Glenwood at that actual house.
For a while. It's probably the longest I've ever lived somewhere, to be honest. I think I was there from 2006 to only 1 or 2 years ago, to be honest. Yeah. So my parents just moved out of there recently. They renovated that house after they sort of moved in and
they bought that.
So they bought that one built already, renovated it, lived there for a long time, and then got out when everyone started to sort of migrate.
Just
to the west.
Everybody kind of scattered. Because obviously, how many siblings you got? So is it just you and your sister?
No, I got two. So I've got a younger brother. And an older sister.
Okay, nice. All right. So one thing I want to jump into, like, your parents have obviously been in the property game for a while. Because I even remember, like, just growing up in Sydney, you know who lives where. It's a small community, the African community. It's not that huge. So what got them into the property game? Like, I mean, obviously they didn't grow up in Australia. So was it just a mindset that they got when they arrived here, or was it kind of instilled with them back home? Were they building properties in Ghana, or what was it?
Look, I think it's more of a mindset that they sort of grew when they came to Sydney.
That's excellent,
because they built their first house in Quakers Hill. They bought it dirt cheap, probably $50,000 or something like that. And
I wish we had properties like that nowadays.
And so they built the first house in Quakers Hill, and then I guess it just continued. They just wanted to continue to build. They were working, had decent jobs. I'd say.
Yeah.
And then they had the money to just build and
Keep building. Yeah.
move.
That's excellent, man. Because obviously, that mindset is not something that that mindset is not a mindset that a lot of people that are coming from overseas or, African, let's just put it Africa, Africans, obviously financial literacy is what we're trying to teach on the podcast. And, coming from those areas, we're not really taught too much about financial literacy, even our parents,
Oh, yeah.
So coming here and then being able to be able to achieve some of the things that they have, like build properties, like going on, like you said, to 4 or 5 properties or wherever they're at, like that's a massive achievement, you know what I mean? So just wanted to obviously, give them praise and just say, that's excellent. Like, and obviously did that kind of teach you to then start building your own properties, or did they kind of teach you some stuff? Or?
Yeah. So like that was one of the reasons why I wanted to get into property,
Oh, because of your parents?
Yeah.
You studied them? Okay.
So, they were one of the only people doing it. And I think once other people in the gunning community saw them sort of buying and building houses in sort of newer, sort of
the blueprint was kind of laid.
Like newer estates. Like people started to follow them. And then through them building new houses, like, there were builders and different, sort of professions that I saw, and I saw them sort of like converse and meet with and run their meetings and whatnot about building a house. But these were people who were also building other things, like building townhouses, building like unit sites as well. So that's sort of where I got the thinking that I want to maybe step into property and see what it would like, or see what it would be like as a career for me.
Oh wow! So what you're doing now is just based on the fact that you watched your parents build that blueprint.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's like, okay, you want to kind of get into that field.
Yeah. Like property was a big, it was a big area. And because of my parents, it's definitely one of the influences. There were a few other things as well that influenced me to sort of go into the property field. But parents and friends and.
But did they give it, like, were they the typical African parents where they're like, Lord, you better do this, or, because I was even telling Jesse, like, in African communities, sometimes they don't let their children be who they want to, you know what I mean? So was it or were they kind of flexible with what you wanted to do?
I guess I was the middle child, so I don't think I had as much pressure on me.
Oh, okay, got you.
My sister was older, so she came through first. So we were trying to, like, you should do this, you should do that.
Yeah.
Maybe didn't quite go the way that they wanted with her, so they sort of pulled back on me a bit, I think. But
and then you that's excellent. So let's talk about, like, what you do, in terms of your role, and could you walk us through, like, so what is your actual, like, what is your actual role in detail? Like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis and things like that?
So I work for a company called CBRE. We're a large sort of commercial real estate firm. Headquarters are in the US, and we've got offices in about 35 countries. My role specifically, I'm a manager within the investment and development site sales team.
That's excellent.
So mainly focusing on commercial property and residential development sites. That's what I do. So day to day, we sell development sites and commercial investments. That's what we do day to day. But obviously there's a lot that goes into that. We're meeting with developers, we're meeting with investors, we're providing feasibilities, providing advice to clients on how to strategically market their properties. And we're negotiating on buyers' behalf and sort of vendors' behalf, especially in this current property market. Over the last year or two, there's a lot that's going on, So it's
obviously, but obviously
quite broad. But the main thing I'd say we do is we help clients find commercial property, and we help clients sell their commercial property.
So talk me through, like, so obviously when you meet up with you work with developers, like not all the time, but in some cases you do. So what's the time frame from usually when you talk to a developer and let's say they show you a site, or, obviously they show you a site, show you what it's going to look like off the plan, whatever it is that they pitched to you. So what's usually the time frame between that and then when the sale or when everything is closed at the end? Is it usually quite long that you?
No, not really. I think it's generally it's about an eight week process. I'd say like an 8 week process from I guess, meeting with someone who owns a site, like an asset. We sit with them. We have to get an understanding of the site. So we'll talk with our valuations team. We'll talk with our...
So you have in-house valuation teams. Okay.
Yeah, so that's something that we sort of leverage off quite a lot. So CBRE being like a sort of global firm, we have different business lines within CBRE.
Okay.
So we've got a valuations business. We've got a leasing business, retail sales. We've got a project management business. So look, there's a lot of business lines, and we can sort of leverage off that quite easily. So when we have information about certain markets, that's who we leverage off. Obviously, we have our own knowledge. We work in these markets, so we have our own knowledge and we apply that. But sometimes you need to go outside to speak to your valuations team to see, you know, what's sold in the area, what values they're putting on certain sites or certain properties, what yields are applying in the current market, things like that. So
there's a lot that obviously goes into that stuff. Yeah.
So that's sort of one of the first things we do. So we sit with the client, we get the information, we go away, we sort of we price up the job. So we work on what we think it's worth, what the highest and best use is. We do either a development feasibility or we do an investment analysis on the site to say, you know, your property based on the information that you've given us is worth X based on, you know, the income, the type of tenant, where it's located, if it's got any future development potential, if it's got a DA on the site, so a DA approval on the site. There's a lot of things that go into it, but that'll generally take us about a week. Then we go back to the owner, we'll put a proposal together and a strategy. If they're happy with it, we'll take it to market, and then we'll start our sort of marketing process.
Wow. So this could be like so for example, I could own like a massive block of land and then I could come to you guys, right? And then obviously if I want to sell it, you guys can help with that process. So do the valuation on the land and then obviously work with your team to try, like, I'm talking more commercial, right? It's not your typical block of land where you build like a residential home on there. We're talking about like, you know,
sometimes we do delve into that space, but there has to be sort of a bigger development play to it. Yeah. If it's your single centered house, we don't touch. But if it's two houses adjoining, and it's got future development potential, like the zoning is right. So we'll check the council zoning, see what the zoning is permitted for, what types of uses you can do on the land. And if there's, you know, potential to do a duplex, to do units, to do a childcare.
How quick do those things get like signed off? Like, you know, if you want to build a childcare and you have a block of land, like I'm assuming that's it's quite a tough process because, you know, anything that are like, I'm just thinking about it from, you know, from just the way it's presented to me, like, you know, you're dealing with kids, you know, there has to be a certain, like it has to be in a certain area, things like that, right? So is that, like, how hard is that process to get signed off when you have a block of land and you want to build something like a childcare?
Childcare specifically is a bit harder just because you are dealing with kids. So there's a lot of government legislation that sort of comes into it. You know, you can't be on main roads. You need to, there needs to be a certain amount of noise from the street that you can hear. It has to be below a certain level. So there can't be like a lot of passing traffic, can't be on main roads, things like that. And then it needs to be set back, obviously. But in terms of the process to I guess,
to get that signed off.
So like there's a lot that's involved. You need to work with a lot of consultants. So you need to work with town planners, development consultants, engineers, and then you need to put a DA approval to council. And that can take anywhere from, in this climate, anywhere from 4 to 8 months, depending on how complex it is.
8 months.
Yeah, to get the actual DA approval. So, you know, you would have a site there that's raw, so it's got no DA. You might have a house.
Yeah, and what's a DA? Just so for people that are listening.
It's a development application.
Oh, development application.
Yeah, so you lodge that to council. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
No, because I'm so
you're used to it. But that's why I'm here. I'm gonna put it out there. So obviously when you say something, I'm gonna, you know, for the viewers, they need to kind of understand all these terminology. So, okay, so who creates that plan to then pitch it to the government? Like, is it all in-house? Like,
Yeah, so like the owner would actually put together like the DA pack with their consultants and the town planners.
Oh, okay.
And
through conveyances and things like that. Is that, or is it like a different?
Yeah, it's different. So it's more so town planners, people that specialize in the development of property in terms of the back end.
Okay. And how much does something like that cost? Like, do you know roughly? Or
it varies.
It varies depending on the block.
Yeah,
the size and things.
Like depending on the type of day you're lodging, depending on how, like, just because we're using childcare as an example.
Yeah, as an example.
Depending on how many kids that you're sort of applying for, how big the land is, how big the property is.
Wow.
There's a lot of different factors that go into it. We run like the feasibilities to tell you what it can be worth, or like what it's worth, and potentially how many kids you can get on a basic sort of overview. But then you also still need to go to a town planner and get their professional advice, because obviously they're the ones that are going to be lodging the actual development application to council.
Got you. Wow. So so obviously it's a different process, like compared to like a childcare versus like a shopping mall or whatever it is. So it's always a different process, no matter what you're trying to build on that block of land. God, that's okay. Right. That's very interesting. So, all right. So now we also talked about on the phone, which was actually very interesting, about like how, so just for regular consumers, right? So people that purchase residential homes, or they're looking to purchase investment properties, for example. Talk to me about like commercial real estate, and, dive into what we were talking about in terms of like, people don't understand that you can get very good returns when you buy commercial land, or you build kind of, commercial offices and things like that.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is, I guess I was saying that a lot of the sort of younger generation are focused on sort of the residential sort of in investment side.
Me too, including I only look at exactly
because that's all they know. And I guess a lot of people think that to get into commercial property, like, you need millions and millions of dollars, or like a bit more money.
So, and sorry to cut you off really quickly, but just when we talk about residential, we're just talking about your average freestanding home, your home, or your units, and
that's gonna like be a long-term investment. You put a tenant in there, you get some income from it, and sort of based on a yield, your return on investment, as a percentage. So
so basically what Lord's talking about is around like getting into like buying. Because for me, and I'll use me as an example, like the way I always saw it is like, I own an occupied home. And then the way I was visualizing it is, in the future, I'm just going to keep buying investment properties. But there's so much other type of properties out there that people can still get good returns on, but we just don't think about it because we just think about investment properties. So So just continue on with the commercial side of things, and just so people can get an understanding that they might be able to even invest in those type of properties versus your normal residential.
So generally what people are seeing in this market, especially in Sydney, they're buying residential investment properties, and like the yields or the returns are, around that 3 to 4% mark, gross, right? So that's your return on like the money that you put in. So you're getting 3% back a year, roughly, like on your money. Whereas in the commercial world, you can potentially get 6, 7, 10% on like commercial investment. So you can make 10% of your money like a year.
Damn.
And the cost of entry is not as much as people think it is. People think you need to buy a commercial property that's worth, like $1 million or $2 million. Like, you can get into some sectors like industrial and retail. Industrial is a really hot market at the moment.
So industrial is like warehouses.
So your warehouses and your like industrial units and things like that. You can get into some of those properties under sort of 500,000. Like, depending on the market. And you can get a return of say 7 to 10%. And the way that some of those leases are structured as well, like the commercial leases. So the lease after tenant signs is that they will cover all of the outgoings. So they're called triple net leases. So they pay the rent and they pay all of the outgoings. So they pay the water rates, the council rates, the repairs and maintenance and things like that, like the air conditioning bills and things like that. So that's why sometimes commercial is a better avenue. If you've got, the money and you find the right one. You put in, you might have to pay, like anything, just pay your, I'm like interest on the loan back as it is. But like in terms of the outgoings, the tenant covers everything.
So you could be positive gearing for those type of commercial. And when we say positive gearing, that's, including everything that the tenant pays for. On top of that, you're still getting,
like you're still
making money on top of that.
Yeah.
Wow. So when you talk about like warehouses or the industrial, so it also depends where you're buying too, because so let's say, for example, you buy one of those properties, like it's not guaranteed that you're going to get tenant. Right, because depending on where you are, like you might buy a mechanic shop or things like that, right? So I mean, does your company, or do you know, or are you able to kind of dive into maybe companies that can help you get tenants? Are they out there?
Yeah, so that's what we do as well. So
you guys do everything, Lord.
We do everything. Yeah, anything to do with like commercial property. CBRE has a business line for it, so we have like multiple business lines, but. So that would be the leasing side. I don't personally handle leasing, but we have an office leasing team, a retail leasing team, and an industrial leasing team. So they sort of handle that aspect. So if we sell a property to someone that's vacant and they want to put a tenant in, we just refer them over to our leasing team, and they'll help them find a tenant. So
how does one know that they're buying into they're buying commercial property in a good place? Like, I mean, so I'm assuming you guys also have people in your company that will like let them know, look, this is a hot place to buy, or is that, am I right?
Definitely. Yeah. So we've got a.
How did they determine that it's a good? Like, how did they determine that? Like
everyone does their research, but there's a lot of there's a lot of sort of research that goes behind it. Obviously, it depends on the type of property. Moving back to development sites, areas that are set for growth, where the government is spending money, they're putting in
like schools,
infrastructure, schools, trains, transport, where there's a lot of sort of residential development happening as well. Those are areas that people focus on in terms of when they're buying bigger development sites, because they know there's going to be growth. They know there's going to be demand and there's a shortage of supply. So it's just about demand and supply for development sites. Obviously for commercial as well, depending on the type of property, the type of tenant, the type of use, it could be a restaurant, or like could be a commercial property that could be suited to a restaurant, right? Obviously they would need to be near transport, near hubs, near like local amenities, shops, where people congregate. That's where you're going to get the foot traffic from, right?
The foot traffic,
So there's a lot of sort of research reports that CBRE and external companies do, but it's important to go sort of visit these areas, see what's happening on a day-to-day basis before you dive into one of these sort of properties, just to see what's happening around the area.
So Lord, when it comes to these big blocks of land that people buy for development, like, is there any strategies in which like people can come together and potentially buy these blocks of land? Because I can imagine like there are people that can go out and afford these lands because there's many people with wealth in Australia. Do you know any other ways that people can come together? Because I'm referring more to the African community, because obviously there is these opportunities out there for people to maybe come together and buy blocks of land for development, units and things like that. So do you have any strategies in which people can do that?
Look, I think the simple answer is that, for something like that, where if one person doesn't have enough capital, is sort of building a syndicate, like a syndicate of people, like a syndicate of investors to come together and buy something. Generally, obviously, like the risk for each person is less because you're not contributing as much money. And that's how a lot of these sort of bigger developers actually do it. Even if they've got tons of money, they've still got 2, 3, 4 people. They set up a company or a trust, or they buy it in their personal names. That's up to them how they set it up.
Yeah.
But that's definitely a way.
Because in your role, you would have seen the way people set up their structure many times, And obviously, we're just speaking general. We're not talking about a specific person. But do you have like an example of how someone has been able to put together a group of people for development? Or do you know anyone that, you don't have to say their name, but just a strategy? Give us a strategy.
Of course. So there's this one example that I use quite often. one of our bigger clients, who's probably Western Sydney's sort of biggest developer, sort of biggest landowner at the moment. Wow. And we deal with on a weekly basis.
Wow.
So he started off.
So it's just an individual?
It's an individual. He's built a company with his family, with his brothers.
Okay. Right. So in-house, they're all in-house.
So he was a taxi driver. Started off a long time ago. A taxi driver, worked day and night, to provide for his family. Him and his brothers sort of got together. They started off by buying one property. So it was probably two houses that was suitable for like a townhouse or like a duplex scheme, right? So they started off like that. It probably like the outlay was maybe $500,000 or like less than $1 million, let's say, and there were 2 or 3 of them, right? So they bought this property. They lodged a DA. They built a duplex for the townhouses, and then they sold it off, and they made profit on that. And then they just kept going. Bought another site, built some more duplexes, some more townhouses, flipped it, made a profit, and they kept going. So they kept rolling their money. That's the thing that a lot of these smart investors and smart developers do. Like they don't just build and stop and like use the money for something else. They build,
they reinvest it.
They make they make the profit and then they reinvest in something else straight away. Because there's also some obviously tax implications, capital gains tax things that they need to sort of factor in. But if they're using it to continue to build, they can sort of write it off as a loss on their books. And it just helps that way.
There's definitely tax incentives. And they would know that, they deal with a lot of accountants and things like that, that understand how that part of, finance works.
Correct. So that's one of the ways, like I know as a proven example of how someone sort of built a huge empire. Now he builds, like apartments, he builds houses, he builds townhouses, he builds retail shops, like commercial shopping centers. He builds everything, and he owns a lot of land around Western Sydney.
Jesus.
But he just started off by buying one, moving the profit on to another one, and just continue to build. Obviously, he got a bit lucky. But you have to be willing to sort of risk something to actually make some money. And I think that's something that a lot of our sort of younger generation and people that I see, even like the older generation, like our parents and the people a bit older than us, or our community in general, they aren't willing to take risks. Like they're very precious about their money, which they should be. But if you're using it to build wealth, and the opportunity is right, I think you should be taking a bit of risk, because you can't make money if you don't risk.
If you don't risk, right? And obviously keeping money in the bank doesn't make you that much money unless you have, Even like this last year, savings rates in banks were sub 2%, sub 1%. Horrible. Yes. Oh, it's horrible. I just checked my savings account recently. I didn't even know. I just looked at it and I didn't even understand that the interest rate was even that low. It's like 0.55, and I'm just like, what's the point? Like,
crazy.
What's the point of, like, there's absolutely no point of keeping money in a bank account anymore, So
you need to put it into something that's going to grow, like assets, property, commercial property. You just need to keep finding ways to diversify your investments, and commercial property for a lot of people is definitely a good way to do it.
Damn, with commercial property, because I just think like I was saying before, like people don't actually think about commercial property as a they just don't think of it like as an investment. So what is like the process? I don't know if you know the answer to this question. I'll just throw it out there. But what's the process when it comes to getting finance for a commercial property? Is it just the same way like the LV? Like I don't know if you know too much about like the LVRs. Do you go through the bank just as normal to acquire, or can they go through your company? And then is there people that are able to help them with the finance?
So CBRE has a debt and equity team who do help people find finance. It's like a broker. It's like an intermediary.
Okay, broker for commercial,
but they more so deal with complex deals. Bigger players who have a lot of money tied up. They might not get the funds to a traditional bank just because of what they've got going on.
What they've got going.
And they sort of reach out to a lot of sort of private private lenders. So, very, very wealthy people in the eastern suburbs. Who do private lending at circa 10%, 10%,
10%, 5 to 10%,
but a bit more than that now. So
are you referring to the interest rate, or are you talking about like the amount of money they can?
No, the interest rate.
The interest rate, they do it. Yeah, they do it at a very high percentage.
So, like a very high percentage. But for some people who are using it for development sites and investments to make a profit, they can make it work because obviously they're pulling profits out of another thing. They can pay it back. There's all different ways, but private lending is a very common way
in commercial.
Yeah. But you can still get your go through your normal banks to get the commercial loans. But from my understanding, they need to have a bigger deposit.
Yeah.
Generally for the commercial loans, you're looking between 40 to 50% that you need to have
deposit. Wow. Yeah. Oh well, I mean, if you're gonna go out and buy a commercial property, I'm assuming that you would already have other commercial properties that have equity in them.
Even not commercial property, you can have like
just residential equity. Yeah, residential has property. Yeah, it has equity. Yeah.
But generally it's a bit more than your residential, definitely.
God, that's very interesting. Because what I was thinking too is that in the space that I work in, there's a lot of people that buy pharmacies. Like I was actually very shocked. You know what I mean? Like, really? Did you get? No, it's just because like you don't really. Like I actually didn't even know like people could actually buy pharmacies. Like you know what I mean? Like it's just you would think that you need a specific qualification to buy those type of type of facilities or whatever you call them.
Are they buying the actual business or are they buying the freehold property? That's probably the thing. I'm like,
no, it's a good question. From what I have seen in notes, like they already own previous pharmacies.
Okay.
So they would have either they were doctors or whatever they were.
So they're in the operation.
So they're already in the operation.
Business
in the actual business of a pharmacy, So which is and I'm assuming during COVID, like that would have it would have been a very hot market, so people would have people just would have gravitated to it. So what other commercial properties do you? So what I'll ask is like, what advice would you give people, or just general insight into someone that is looking to buy a commercial property? So let's say, for example, they own occupied home. They have another investment property, which is just a standard home. So like what could you advise someone, or just give someone sort of general information about what steps they could put in place to potentially go down the commercial road if they wanted to buy one of these properties?
Yeah. Look, I think the first step would be to speak to a commercial agent, speak to someone that's in the game. And get them to give you some options, because there are always options for every budget.
Yeah.
But that would be the first thing. Speak to a commercial agent, get to know the market, see what's selling in your area, have a look at where the growth is. Some of these newer estates, there's a lot of there's an influx of residential population, so there needs to be sort of retail and amenities, sort of business parks, places where people can work near there, because the last thing you want is people building a new estate and then they have to travel an hour and a half to go work. So as these sort of newer estates are built, there will be more commercial opportunities in the form of retail, industrial, office, you name it. There's
That's very interesting. No, it's awesome, because I think this is a very important episode, because like I had mentioned before, like I said, we don't think about these things, and especially within the African community, like our generation, a lot of people are actually buying properties and looking for the next step. Like, what can I buy? What can I do? So I think that's just talking about the commercial aspect of things is something that I really wanted to get out there. That especially you having that knowledge. Even when we spoke on the phone, like you even enlightened me to understand. Damn, like what am I doing? I should have invested into commercial. If I knew the yields and everything. When I talk about yields, like the returns were that big, then it's something that I would have potentially looked into. I want to ask you about the government leases. Like people that So my partner, she always talks about, like let's say, for example, you buy a commercial property, right? Yeah. And then you get like a CBA tenant, or you're on a gold mine, aren't you? Like, because
they are.
they signed like what 20, you know,
signed like 10 by 10, 5 by 5 year leases with options for probably like 20, 30 years, right? And they are considered your A-grade tenants.
Yeah.
Like you want a bank as a tenant. You want like one of those sort of bigger firms or bigger companies as a tenant, right? Because like, you know, they're going to always be performing. They're always going to be paying their rent. They sign long-term leases.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, you know, if depending on how you set up the lease, they'll pay the outgoings, and, you know, like your asset will grow in value. If you were to buy, this is probably talking on a bigger scale, like a vacant property, for say two mil, put a tenant in there, like a CBA.
But they have to approach you. Like, it's not.
No, you can approach them, like you can have your agent. So that's why agents in the commercial world are very important, because that's their job. They speak to tenants all the time. They speak to people that are looking for space, and they try to match a tenant with a property
with a specific area,
or buyer.
Because even libraries and stuff like that, like those, like I don't know, people are sitting on gold. Like if you get a library, or you get, like we're saying, like any of the banks or anything, you just know, like they're not going to miss rent or anything like that. You know, like that's right.
And then if you want to sell it after you put the tenant in, or, you know, down the line, it's definitely going to be worth a lot. And people are going to apply sharper yields. So when you've got when you're selling and you've got a lower yield, it means that the price is going to be higher.
Lord, like, now that we're coming towards the end of the episode, look, what I want to say is thank you so much, man. Like, honestly, I really appreciate, like, the way I reached out to you. Obviously, I know that you got a busy schedule, especially with the kids and, you know, and the wife and things like that. So I'm like, it's very humbling that, you know, you're able to come out and, you know, give your time to me today to be able to sit down and give your knowledge and everything that you've learned within 7-8 years of you being in that industry. So I really want to say thank you, man. I really appreciate your time, man.
Anytime.
And obviously, even just want to obviously give you your roses too with everything that you've been able to achieve. Because I know that, like, I know your story. Like, obviously, you know, your parents, like, buying property and things like that. So I've always I'm not really surprised that you know, you're doing quite well for yourself. Oh, you're doing well for yourself. Not quite. Lord is doing well.
I'm doing okay.
He's being humble. Lord is doing okay. He's doing
better.
Yeah. Well, anyway, look, I'm just proud. Like, I think that obviously within the African community, we should kind of leverage off each other. Yep. Like, everybody that's kind of doing something. Like, I know Haji, and I know, like, these boys, like, they're very serious boys. Like, I played soccer with them. He's very switched on. Jesse, obviously being in banking for a very long, like, I know, like, this is what I'm trying to build, especially with Black Wealth Connect, is to try and bring everyone together. It doesn't always mean that we need to buy like an investment property or whatever, but it's the knowledge at the end of the day. Because the youth, you know, some of the things that I wish that I had learned a bit younger, like, and now that I know, why not create a platform where we're able to give this information out to the youth and help them, so that way they don't need to go through some of the stuff that we potentially went through, you know what I mean? So honestly, man, it's been a very good episode. But before we wrap it up, I'm not just going to let you go straight away like that, because I wanted to ask you a few questions. This is the fun part of the podcast. So if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self, I'll say 2 pieces of advice about finance, what would they be?
It's a hard one, actually. I haven't really thought about it.
So what are the stuff that you wish that you had? Yeah, because obviously with the knowledge that you know now, and you go back.
Were
you buying expensive cars? Were you credit cards? Like you weren't that hectic?
No, I wasn't that hectic. I guess, you know, I jumped into a few things early. Like I after I had my first full-time job, I did buy a car that was pretty expensive. Maybe just, you know, read a bit more. That's awesome. Some, you know, my financial books. That can sort of put you in the right sort of mindset. Network.
That's excellent. Yeah.
Network with a lot of you know, people who have done it. People that are older than you. Don't be afraid to approach someone you've seen on LinkedIn or you know, someone's spoken about that's doing really well in sort of the finance or the property sector, and sort of get some advice from them. also, just keep up to date with the market in terms of what's happening in the finance world, where the sort of interest rates are at, how best to save money to invest, if it's in shares, if it's in property, if it's through a financial planner, just work on building the right sort of mindset to be able to save and unlock invest that money.
So who has been your most important professional mentor in finance and why? Like, who have you had around you that you can kind of still connect with today and be like, look, I need this?
I think a lot of my close friends that I hang around now have been a big part in.
They're kind of they're very switched on.
Yeah, they're very switched on. They're doing very well in their personal and work life, and we share knowledge. We've obviously been speaking for some time about investing in different things, be it property, be it products, and we started at a pretty young age, even though none of them have really come off as big as we hope they would come off. But it's very important to get started, to have like-minded people around you speaking about things to make money, build wealth, and invest for the future. And then as you speak with more people, as people get older, they sort of have the same idea, and you get together and you sort of share ideas, share knowledge. So similar to what you're doing now, you're sort of doing it on a bigger scale. We're doing it on a smaller scale, just in our groups.
Just in the groups, But
I think it's really good what you're doing now, reaching out to people, sharing the knowledge, because it's definitely something that I wish I had access to when I was younger as well.
Of course.
Having this knowledge, I'm available on a podcast. Somewhere.
There's so much knowledge within our community, honestly. We take it for granted sometimes. We all played soccer, we all did this, but it's like you don't know. You're sitting next to someone. You don't even know what he does. We never even had those conversations. It's just like, did you get the latest boots? Like, he cares. Like, he's a credit assessor. Like, do you want it? Like, you know what I mean? Exactly. So that part is very important. But now, awesome, man. Look. Like I said, thank you so much again, man. This has been awesome, and I honestly can't wait for people to hear the information that you've given out today. A lot of gems. This is why we do it for. The knowledge needs to be spread. It needs to be spread out there for people to be able to consume, and hopefully, if it changes one person's life, maybe somebody will look at this episode and be like, "Oh, I should get into commercial," and hopefully that works out for them or whatever. So. Thank you again, man. And any final words before you want to wrap it up? We can give a big shout out to to Mary and all that podcast, like Fufu and Tibbs. Like,
shout out to my wife, Fufu and Tibbs. I've been asking me to come on for a while, but I haven't got to it.
Nah, you got to jump on that now. But
share my knowledge soon. But thank you for sort of having me. I really appreciate it. I think what you're doing is awesome, and I
appreciate it, man.
Hopefully someone out there learns from it, and they continue to build and they can sort of make a successful career, make a successful investment out of it, and build wealth. I think there's a lot of sort of professionals out there, young, and there's a lot of ways that we can invest in different things, but more so commercial property through syndicates and funds. And we just need sort of the right drive in the right direction. I think I'm like the type of people that you have on, will really, we can really
do something.
We can really do something with that and explore it. So
that's such a good way to to wrap it up, because it is it's so good. Like, everybody has the same vision. Like, everybody, like I bring on the podcast, has exactly the same vision. It's about how do we get there now versus just talking about it. We got to stop talking about it and actually do it. I know everybody has different lives, different circumstances, but still, there's no excuse. Life is too short. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we can't just wait until
about it forever.
Forever, and then you get to 60, and then you're tired. Your bones can't even move. That's not how we want to. We want to wrap things up. So look. You know what? We're going to stay in contact. Like, I honestly, like, everybody that I have on this podcast, like, I really do want to reach out to, like, even in the future, like with commercial. Like, I'm even going to, if you don't mind, like, obviously I'll talk to you about it, but even putting some of your information if people want to reach out to you or just understand how to purchase commercial or just anything, like anything in general. Obviously, you can refer them to your company, things, whatever you need to do, but obviously it's just a good starter it's just a good starting platform for people to be able to come up to you and reach 100%. Out and get some information. So yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much, Lord. Black Wealth Connect, and we'll see you soon. Peace.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.